in terms of what we were designed for?
He was also able to translate cuneiform, like you and I read the morning paper. And Christian O'Brien has written a couple of dynamite books, what I recommend people to try to obtain and read. And he reached basically the same conclusion. We were engineered for a specific period of time as a slave race. They were greedy, and they did us originally for their own agenda. And they used us, and then when we began to manipulate or multiply.
That was certainly they understood that was a potential.
Well, they didn't think about it apparently. Their genetic scientists must not have looked ahead far enough. Anyhow, when they created us, and then they gave us the ability to reproduce, and we multiplied and got out of control. We ended up more than they expected, you see. And as I say, they used us as a slave race for a long, long time. And finally, we multiplied to such an extent that we became a nuisance. And they ended up overtly leaving the planet. As I said, Zechariah and I are in agreement that they didn't really ever leave. They've been here all along, but they overtly withdraw from control of the species and let us sort of run our own race to see where we would go. And now I think that they're interested enough to come back and involve themselves with us to a degree that they're not only going to be able to provide us with some guidance and a little scientific know-how, but
why the change of heart?
Well, I think that they are an evolving species also. Every intelligent species in the universe is in the process of growth and development and evolution. And then we're getting into an area of, first of all, why the hell are we here? And that is, again, another subject that we could go on for hours.
Yes.
What you see and I here, this shell we're living in, is not really us. We are what we call a soul, but what we are a spark of divine conscious intelligence.
Infinite in nature.
Infinite in our nature. We incarnate on this planet. We do it many times. It's like school, first grade, second grade, so on. I only suspect that maybe I might be graduating from grade school right now. I'm looking forward to hopefully a time getting out of high school and maybe getting a degree after a couple of years at the university, but that's probably way ahead.
But let's say, okay, they've given us some tinker toys. We've been able to, with their help maybe, engineer some things and certainly back engineer some things.
In a great way, I think, from the very beginning. As I said, they overtly withdrew, but they haven't withdrawn. They are.
Let's talk about where they are.
They have covert involvement with us from the very beginning.
Let's talk
now,
about
you ought to talk about why they have changed their tune.
Why
they've grown themselves.
That's what you're saying. They have evolved.
They have evolved, and what's interesting to me is that they, I'm sure, and the evidence I've collected and the contacts we've made and the evidence that they've shared with us, that they have a concept of deity very much like our own. They recognize that there is a conscious intelligence that permeates the universe that is benevolent and loving and controlling. You and I would call it God. They recognize that there is that power.
They recognize then cause and effect, karma, whatnot.
Yes.
So is this perhaps making up for what they had perpetuated on this planet in times past, or are you saying that there's...
I think they probably regret some of the things that they may have done initially. As I say, they're not only superior in terms of technology, but they have a very highly developed spiritual awareness as well.
Now, at this point, my understanding is that this is one group of off-planet beings from one culture. But there are many. There are several.
Well, I was aware of 4.
They're not all on the same page.
Are they all on the same page?
No, they're not all on the same page. And you're talking about, so you're talking about this particular one coming through from that strand of history of the human species involvement with them is now coming into a more mature place not only in their own evolution, but also encouraging human beings to come into a more mature place, and even looking at extending technological help for our own advancement, and even perhaps some of the technologies leading to what we would call immortality or expanded lifespans in the
They're
least.
helping to nurture us.
Yes.
And
Okay.
they had some nurturing of their own over the centuries.
Mm-hmm.
You see, the Anunnaki, and we use that term generically, you know, I use it to apply to all the different groups that are coming and going. But there is an intelligence out in the universe. And when I say out, that's misleading. All around. As I say, we're in an ocean of conscious intelligence. There are intelligences out there that we refer to as transcendentals that are not human. The Anunnaki are basically like we are.
Let's talk about the transcendentals.
The transcendentals are a species and a race that is so advanced. You talk about time, we don't grasp time, but they're so advanced, 1 billion years, they can incarnate in a physical form if they choose.
But they're non-physical in
But
nature.
they are non-physical beings in our concept of what physical is.
I have a question.
They're spiritual primarily, but they are incredibly advanced, intelligent, spiritual beings.
Have they been identified in other people's work that you know of as something like the Watchers or the Guardians?
Well,
or...
that was those terms, the Watchers and the Guardians, custodians. Those are all ancient terms.
Right. Would you say these beings
The
you're talking about
transcendentals, we have traditionally referred to them when we've seen them, and they have involved themselves in our lives from time to time. We referred to them as gods, angels. Well, they are beings much like us, but they reached a point in their evolution in the time. I mean, long before there was a planet Earth, long before our little sun was ignited. My God, these intelligences are really, we stand in awe of them. And they have introduced themselves into our lives from time to time. A few years ago, not too long ago, early 1800s, a good and dear man by the name of Joseph Smith had an experience in his bedroom that shook that poor guy right to his very foundations. And when he was over with, after having been visited by 2 of these transcendentals, who appeared as beings of light in his presence, he formed a religion, the Mormon Church. Well, that's the kind of things that happen to people who are confronted by them. As I said, you're never ever the same. The world does not appear to you anymore like it did before.
So do you feel that the transcendentals are also here assisting
Oh, they're
now in
everywhere.
our development?
When I say, well, you talk about here, what do you mean here? In San Jose?
Well, no, I
On
mean
the planet?
in Earth's dimension.
Oh, listen, they're everywhere.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we're having help from those.
They're timeless beings.
Who are the beings then that are at the underground bases that you refer to
Oh,
in
most of
Alaska, Australia, so forth? What?
Most of them are Anunnaki. They may 1 or 2 different species have been seen different places. We're working with several of them.
Can you talk about where the bases are located?
Well, let me tell you something. There is an ET base under Mount Hayes in Alaska. There's another ET base under Zimbabwe. There's one in the mountains of the Pyrenees between France and Spain called Mount Perdido. They generally develop these massive installations under mountains where they can go and come, you know. They've even been seen flying into mountains. How they do that, God knows how. Anyhow, we've got them in the Puerto Rican Trench. We've got them at Puerto Rico, and we're working with them there in Puerto Rico. Our military, or a certain portion of our military, is working with them. The most recent information that I've received that I trust from a source that I consider reliable is they and we are working together in a massive way on Kwajalein Atoll in the Pacific.
Toward what end? What are we working on
Well,
together?
they're assisting us in science. They've helped us build our space program, and I'm not talking about NASA and that rattletrap old shuttle that they throw up every,
Right.
which, bless it, has killed.
You don't mean NASA, the cover organization.
Well, NASA is,
Yeah.
it's a front.
Right,
It's like
exactly.
the old Blue Book used to be. The Air Force had it.
Yeah.
It was only a public